their growth rates have been revised down by 300 basis points. And each 1% drop in the growth rate of China creates 20 million unemployed people. So you're looking at 60 million unemployed Chinese. I'm just giving you a flavor of, the scale of the problem. I don't have to tell you what's happening in Europe and what's happening in America. So it's not easy raising funds. It's not easy, it's impossible to issue paper at this time. And therefore, going to the IMF at the right time was a very good decision, for which the government should be given credit instead of getting slammed. And interestingly, I think they have done everything that the IMF would require them to do anyway. I mean, the exchange rate is flexible, the subsidies have been removed. I mean, they've done virtually everything that is needed. Not much more is required. So I, again, with respect, disagree with the fact that the government hasn't done a lot. I mean, it hasn't done anything. I think the government's done a lot.
Can I ask a follow-up question to Ali on that? Because he may have some insight.
By the way, I'm not the government. I mean, so
I know you're not. I said you may have some insight in that. I agree with you. I think the government has taken some very difficult political decisions, particularly related to subsidies, etc., which governments that were not elected were not able to or did not do. And I think they should be given credit for that. And their focus has been on macroeconomic stability, which is the first thing you need before anything else can happen. But what perplexes me a little bit is, I think it's been quite obvious for, over a couple of months that the IMF was the only option. And again, I come back to the speed and urgency of moving forward. Why have we not actually gone into the IMF program by now? I think it could have happened rather than going around the bilateral issues, what other countries are going, we can see that the writing is on the wall a long time ago. And the need for speed to go into an IMF program started off. We keep having delays. It was going to be end October, then by mid-November. Now we're talking about maybe 22nd, end of November. And as you said, most of the tough decisions we've taken ourselves, whether it's devaluation, whether it's interest rates, whether it's subsidies.
Farrukh, again, I can't answer that question because I'm not government and I don't speak for the government. But I think it's on track. Everything is on track because there is a process that has to be followed. A letter of intent is issued. The basic conditions have to be agreed to. Then it goes to the executive committee, whatever, of the IMF.
No, but we've seen other countries. No? I mean, they've moved in the same, in much shorter time frame. They have to go through the same process, whether it's Hungary or whether it's Iceland or whoever. Signing an LOI is not a...
That is a question that unfortunately I can't answer, but I think from everything that I know, that there's a certain time frame that maybe in the case of Iceland, the need was so emergent. You see, don't forget, Iceland and Ukraine, etc., these are political issues as well. Don't forget, Russia is trying to extend its influence in Eastern Europe, and the West was trying to resist that. Therefore, helping Ukraine at this point was considered politically, very, very necessary, lest Mr. Putin...
working out, the US is trying to extend its influence. Well, it should be even easier for us.
I mean, what I'm saying is that there are certain issues which, which are political, which we don't really have any knowledge of. But I don't think there's been any delay. Okay. I think, as you know, our delegation was in Dubai for almost 8-9 days, just last week. So I think they're doing, as all they can to ensure that the funds are released. And I think the advisor made a statement recently, just a couple of days ago, that maybe in the next...
Talking about the 22nd or so.
Yeah, the next couple of weeks, the funds should be here. But again, the fact that we got, that we approached the IMF 5 weeks ago was again a very good decision, sensible decision.
Okay, I don't think we can even take the last question now, but...
Oh, Mr. Mahmood.
I have a question to all three of you. You've been taking all sorts of measures in trying to sort out the difficult mess we are in. As of now, roughly 1.3 billion US dollars is owed to IPPs. To me alone, $600 million. What do you think the government needs to be doing, and how they will do in sorting this mess out? And they are also going for the IMF program, which is going to stunt GDP growth. more of a stabilization program. Do you think that that's the right road to take, or should we have a mixture of stabilization and a growth-oriented program?
Would you like to take a stab at that?
I thought Dr. Ali Raza was eminently qualified to respond on behalf of the government, but I think, the growth and the inflation management, that's always a balance. And I think yours is a real specific issue. And, there may be some political, considerations of why this has not been dealt with. And I agree that's an issue that should be dealt with, this circular debt issue. But, the growth itself, the inflation, is the worst form. We all know that there's a worst form of taxation for any poor. Okay? So, the growth mode can only come. Either you let the inflation go, and then you go into the discussion with the economists would go into forever, whether you should let control inflation or should you try and balance out with growth. But, and what's the worst thing, the stagflation situation or inflation? But your issue is something which has been building up, and it's an issue which I personally feel should be addressed very, very quickly. Whether the liquidity is available to deal with it, or at least give you a roadmap of how and what are the milestones and the way the repayment should take place. But I think, quite rightly, I cannot respond unfortunately on behalf of the government, but I think that's certainly a priority item, because that has a knock-on effect not just on companies like yours, but on a lot of financial sector, and by the way, on the economy itself. Among the priority items, I think coming out of the IMF program after they are into that program. By the way, this IMF thing about the delay and whether we should have proactive, unfortunately, I think let's recognize the fact, many of us tend to believe in Pakistan, going back to the IMF is a matter, it's like बेइज्जती हो जाती है IMF के पास जाने के लिए, which is not necessarily so. And we should be mature enough to accept that. Better countries, more developed, sophisticated markets have had to go to the fund. So, and you only go when you have no other option, because the capital markets don't have the liquidity.
I think my question still has not been answered. What measures should the government adopt in sorting this crisis out? Because IMF package is not going to help solve my problem, the liability problem. What is it the government needs to do? You be the central banker, you're now sitting in.
Are you talking about specifically your problem?
Yeah, I think it's such a day.
It's a major problem. $1.3 billion as of today. From there we get this, how do we pay? What do we do?
Has any talk, I don't know, has